On behalf of the Department of English Language and Literature, I extend a warm welcome to the 5th Veena Nobel Endowment Lecture. I welcome Professor P. Bharati to come on to the dais to preside over. I am very happy to invite today's speaker, Professor Alladi, Professor of English and an eminent translator, to come on to the dais. My hearty welcome to Professor Peter from Hyderabad Central University, Professor Sharada from SV University, and the scholars and the students from SV University, and of course our scholars and students from our department and the other members from the Mahila University. I now request Professor Bharati to conduct the proceedings.
A very good morning. We will start the program with the university song. Professor Alladi, today's speaker. Dr. V. Nirmala, head of the department. Professor Sharada from the SP University, and faculty from Telugu department, and my own colleagues, and students from SP University and Mahila University, and scholars. A very good morning to you all. I purposely kept Professor Peter last because when I informed one of my colleagues in this university from home science department that he is visiting, he talked to me about 5 minutes about their school days, and in that 5 minutes, more than 5 times she said Manchabbai Sridhar, Manchabbai Sridhar, Manchabbai Sridhar. So I wanted to specially acknowledge Manchabbai Sridhar. Professor Sumakiran. Of course, the senior English staff are always with us, very supportive. Always, we can approach them anytime for anything. Thank you very much for being with us. We have gathered here for Professor Veena Nobel's lecture. I quote, "Discretion will watch over you, understanding will guard you." I endorse that this is fulfilled in her life. Let us thank God for granting her eternal bliss, and also thank God for making her family to gather every year in this special occasion. May God be kind to her family. We thank her family for that. Because this is a platform, every year we meet and we hear new voices. Yes, Professor Alladi, my acquaintance is very limited, but she always proves to be a source of strength in any event or in any situation to those around. Yes, truly a source of strength and support she voluntarily and willingly extends. I think I also received the support on 2 or 3 occasions. Thank you, madam. Telugu writers, especially Telugu writers, ever be grateful to Professor Alladi for her contribution. Writers should always remember her with appreciation and gratitude for introducing them to the English readers. With these few words, now I invite Professor Veena, the head of the department.
I am here to introduce Professor Veena Nobel, who had left an indelible impression on the university as the administrator. And in fact, I deem it an honor to introduce Professor Veena Nobel on this occasion. She was an excellent academician with 36 years of experience, an inspiring teacher, an able administrator, and above all, a very good human being. And she is very close to our heart. She is always remembered for her cheerful and sporting nature and dignified demeanor. She worked in the Department of English, Sri Padmavati Mahila Vishwavidyalayam from 1998 to 2011, and also served the university as a Vice Chancellor from 2004 to 2006. During her tenure as a Vice Chancellor, Professor Veena could bring out phenomenal changes in the administration and had left her own mark in the university. Her contributions to Sri Padmavati Mahila Vishwavidyalayam as the Vice Chancellor are simply irreproachable. It's quite evident when we look at the progress of the university, and I just want to spell out some of the very significant things that happened during her tenure as the Vice Chancellor of this university. Started 7 schools in place of 2, courses got doubled from 29 to 57, strength of the students increased from 1200 to 2900, digitalized the library with internet and InflibNet, manifold increase in student supportive services, introduced Earn While You Learn scheme, Fulbright scholars visited the campus, MOU with prestigious institutions, prestigious international conference on women's universities, Better Future Leader project of Netherlands and Young Life project Oxford were undertaken. Special attention was bestowed upon research activities, resulting in the award of a record number of 69 PhDs during her tenure. University and industry interface was encouraged. There was 30% of increase in the infrastructure. 30 important dignitaries visited the campus. All India ball badminton tournament was organized. 23rd Inter-University South Zone Youth Festival was conducted, in which students from 70 universities of South India participated. So there are many more to be mentioned, but for want of time, I have cited only a very few things. And we have been organizing this endowment lecture instituted in memory of Professor Veena by her beloved daughters, Ms. Shireen Noble Nasir and Hepkiba Zedde, since December 2018, the month in which Professor Veena took charge as the Vice Chancellor of this university. And every year we are organizing this event by inviting eminent literary personalities for the benefit of the students. The first lecture was given by Shireen herself, the youngest daughter of Professor Veena, on the topic Women as Leaders. And the second lecture was given by Professor Mohanji Ramlan, retired Professor of English from HCU, on Reflections on Conservative Literary Imagination in 2019. Third lecture was given by Professor N. Nagaraju, Vice Chancellor of Barampur University, on Voicing Nature, Relation with Nature and Possibilities of Restitution in 2020. Fourth lecture was given by Professor Nataraj Pulia from University of Bangalore on Indian Dalit literature and African American literature, a comparative view. And of course, the last two lectures were arranged during COVID, during pandemic, and they were delivered through online, through Zoom platform. And this time, Professor Alladi is kind enough to grace this occasion, and thank you very much, Madam, for being with us today. And we are looking forward to listening to the fifth Veena Nobel Endowment lecture to be delivered by Professor Alladi. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Nirmala. A warm welcome to Professor Uma, a madam dependable in the campus. That's how I always address her. And other colleagues from Social Work Department, South SLC, and who has become very recently, has become our former colleague. Till April, she was our colleague, now a former colleague, Sheila Surupurani. A warm welcome to you all. Now I invite the former student of HCU, Professor Harpat Marani, who is a professor now in our department.
The distinguished guests on the day, of the day, and the most valued members of the audience. It's indeed a pleasure to introduce one of my favorite teachers at the University of Hyderabad in the presence of my present students and in the presence of one of my former teachers, Professor Sridhar, and in the presence of some of my colleagues in the university today. Given a free hand, I get anecdotal and it can go on endlessly. So to prevent that, I'll just read out a brief note I have made on Professor Alladi, the speaker of today's endowment lecture. On completing the task of drafting the Indian Constitution, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the chairman of the drafting committee, said in 1949, I quote, "I was more than surprised when the drafting committee elected me to be its chairman. There were in the drafting committee men bigger, better, and more competent than myself, such as my friend Sir Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyer." Unquote. Sir Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyer, who played a major role in shaping the course of the history of modern India, was regarded as a bigger, better, and more competent person than himself by no less a person than Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Sitting to the left of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in this image is Sir Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyer, the legendary legal icon. And sitting in front of you on the dais, left to Professor T. Bharati here, is the granddaughter and the daughter of his son, the once Chief Justice of AP High Court, Sri Alladi Kuppuswamy. It feels as if the Department of English, Sri Padmavati Mahila Viswavidyalaya, is making a tryst with history in having Professor Alladi Uma as the speaker of today's endowment lecture. I am sure Professor Veena Nobel will rejoice from above that her very competent and meritorious junior at Usmania University in MA is giving the endowment lecture instituted by her dear daughter in her memory. Professor Alladi Uma did her BSc and MA at Usmania University. She received her PhD from the State University of New York at Buffalo. After a brief stint of teaching at Wabash College, United States, she returned to India. Her first teaching assignment was in the Department of English at Sri Padmavati Mahila University, where she started the English department. She moved on to Usmania University and then University of Hyderabad, from where she took voluntary retirement in 2011. She has been involved with her family trust, the Alladi Memorial Trust, which works for the medical, legal, and educational needs of the disadvantaged. Her areas of interest include women's literature, Indian literature, African American literature, Dalit literature, and translation. She has published extensively and has guided many research scholars in these areas. She has served the university in various capacities, including the head of the department and the chief proctor. She has been on the jury of Bhasha Samman Award. She was the recipient of the Senior Fulbright Fellowship at Yale University, the United States of America. She has been translating for more than 25 years with M. Sridhar, who is amidst us today, from Telugu to English. Their most recent translations are How Are You Veg by Jupaka Subhadra, Asprusya Ganga and Other Stories by Kolakuluri Ina, Need a Bit of Freedom by K. Sivareddy, and Telugu, The Best Stories of Our Time, edited by Volga. For their contribution to translation, they have been awarded the Rentala Memorial Award and the Malati Pramoda Award. Through their English translations, they have rendered greater visibility to Telugu literature at the national and international level. Professor Alladi Uma is not given to flaunting either her family lineage or her own rich educational, academic, and literary achievements. Thanks to Google, I gathered all the information about her through Google. As a student, I didn't know all this about her. She is known for her humility, amiability, and concern for her students. That she was the most sought-after research guide in the department at HCU stands as a testimony to her exceptional human qualities as much as to her scholarship. Professionally, Professor Alladi Uma is known for her outspokenness, integrity, and commitment. It is indeed a privilege for the department to have such an accomplished scholar and translator at today's endowment lecture. I cannot, leave the stage without saying at least two things about two trivia about Professor Uma and Professor Sridhar. I have about 250 plus contacts on my phone. The only two contacts who do not own a smartphone are these two. And this is the secret behind, the amount of translations they are able to produce. I believe that. And the second thing is, these are the only two members of the faculty in the universities who have taken voluntary retirement. Among the people I have known, I have never seen any university faculty taking voluntary retirement. So these two things, I couldn't refrain from sharing. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Professor Padmarani. Now I invite Professor Rahman.
Professor Nirmala, Professor Bharti, should I say Professor Hari Padmarani, and friends. There are too many friends and colleagues here, therefore I shall not name them. But to all my friends here who have taken the trouble of coming here, I particularly want to mention Uma here, because Uma and I joined the department at the same time. There was another Uma, unfortunately, she is no longer with us. We were three Umas at that time.
and students, whom I miss very much. That's one part of my university life that I miss being with students, learning from students. I've learned a lot in my life from students, and that's something I miss. I interact now with a younger crowd, and I learn a lot from them too. I'm really deeply touched about being asked to come and give this endowment lecture. You've had very, very distinguished people, and Hari Padma has already named those distinguished people. Giving you lectures on various topics. I feel I have no justification to be there in that list of distinguished people. But I feel two justifications. One is my association with Padmavati Mahila University itself, a university that gave me my first job in India and gave me the opportunity to develop a department. I was here for one academic year alone. I would have loved to be here for a longer time, but there were family pressures. My father was sick. I had to go back to Hyderabad and to Osmania University, which was also my alma mater. I studied there. My BSc, my MA was from Osmania University. So I moved to my alma mater, but I didn't very much like going from here, but I had to. And when I also remember SC University very fondly, because when we started the department, so we were 4th selected, there were only 3 in the department, and therefore we had to rely on senior colleagues and colleagues in the SC University who helped us out. I should also remember here the dynamic vice chancellor who started this university, Professor Vanaja Iyengar. I was a little disturbed when I went to the site and I found photographs of everybody, but not of Professor Vanaja Iyengar. I know that she did not care for her name. She only knew what she wanted to do. I'm sure Uma will agree with me that she gave us a lot of freedom to do what we wanted to do. She wanted this to be an outstanding university. And I thank her and the first principal who gave us. We had our differences, but we also had our own agreements with her. And so we were a team. We were a team. We did not have this spacious campus that you have. We did not have this digitalization that you have. We did not have the comfort of this hall that you have. We were in a small building lent to us by the Polytechnic College. We stayed there, but we did a lot. To achieve something, you don't need comfort all the time. Sometimes comfort makes us feel, as if there's nothing more to do. We just lie down on a sofa and keep up mobile, smartphones, whatever we want. But we were in that department. I know how hard. In those days, for social work, we used to go to slums. Even the English department people went along with them. I remember going to various slums. We adopted villages. I'm sure you're doing much more now, but we were a very small group. We shared the same staff room. We did not have separate staff rooms. I was trying to find out who among my friends I still call them my friends, were there. And I was able to track down Jyoti, who retired just a few months ago, and spoke to her, and she said, maybe Bhavani from journalism and Uma may be the only ones who are there from whom you know, because time and tide doesn't wait for no woman, okay? And so it doesn't wait for us, so and we have to move on, but we have good memory. The other reason is that I knew Professor Veena Nobel. We were from the same university. To me, she was Veena. So she was my senior, and she was also an Americanist. So we had many occasions to interact. So when Hari Padma asked me repeatedly, she doesn't give up, she is very stubborn, and stubbornness is good, because that's a good trait of a researcher also, because you never give up. So she kept asking me, and last year I said I'm not very comfortable with this modern things like online teaching and all that. I like to see people. I like to interact with people. I like to be with people, and therefore I come. So my justification is not as a scholar like these people are. I do what I enjoy, and in my own modest kind of manner. And she has embarrassed me by talking about my father and my grandfather. At one level, I'm proud to be my grandfather and my father's grandchild, but I am, and I want each one of you in this audience to be proud of yourself. So translation. Every act of interpretation is a translation because you're taking that thing and you're putting it into your own self and you're reading it. No, even today, I'm sure a social scientist that I know Uma, but I don't know the others whether they're social scientists or not, is no longer or quote unquote objective. There's no longer one way of looking at society. There are many ways of looking at society. Once you say that, you are right. You're doing it in the act of translation. So now I backtrack a bit. If I know the time, I don't want to go beyond that because I've been away from teaching I took voluntary retirement in 2011, and we teachers, we get this sudden urge. For 11 years, I kept mum. Now I've got an audience. Let me speak continuously for any length of time, But Haripatram warned me. She said, don't speak for more than half an hour. So I don't know. I want interaction from younger people because you said the whole thing is 1 hour. I want interaction with younger people. I want to learn. Before I leave this place, I want to learn from you all. And you promise you'll ask me questions? Yes or no? I will. From the students. A good yes. Okay, very good. Okay, I want to hear your voice. So I'll back a little bit. I'll say a few things and then stop. See, I started watching the serial because my child, she was very keen on this serial. But then I kept looking at it because she went away, but I keep looking at it because it's a serial about a woman. It's a serial about an empowerment of a woman, and it's a Hindi serial called Anupama. And this serial I also like because it's about a woman who's not a young, fashionable girl and all that. She's in her 40s and she wants to be independent. She wants to be good. So she is taught, but to tell this audience, she is not a person who says family is interest. She believes in the very strength of the Indian family. So when I was watching this a few episodes ago, I haven't watched in the last 3 days because Haripadma gave me a task and I've been thinking about that rather than watch anything. So I watched the serial. In this serial, there is a gang rape case, of a young girl whom she cannot save from gang rape. So she goes through a lot of tension. So my immediate thing was, did the creator of Anupama get this idea from the Nirbhaya case? Okay? Did it come from there? From the 2012, right? It's the Nirbhaya case. So did she get this idea from there? How did this idea come? So I'm asking myself these questions. Then I read about Poonawalla in the paper. And it says that this man must have got the idea from watching something and then going into this horrible, most atrocious act of cutting his living partner to pieces and having this cruel brain of throwing piece by piece somewhere. He must have got it, they say, from these violent movies or violent things that he has seen. So we have two things here. Did he get it from there? Or tomorrow when somebody writes about it, will I think that they got it from the Poonawalla case? So where does it start? Where does it end? So this is the question that all of us must inquire. So let us not be very glib and say, we use words, no, this is realist, because most of you, I think almost all of you here are literature students, right? You say, I asked a writer who used to be in our department, a poet, whom she knows, a well-known poet, a gay poet, and once I asked him, Professor Hoshain Merchant, who do you write your poetry for? Well, I don't write it for anybody. I write for myself every day. I mean, I'm not interested in social and other things. But can anyone, the minute you put down paper, pen to paper, can you be writing for no one? If that is the case, why do you have to put it on paper? Why do you need to publish it? Even a diary, I don't personally keep diary, but if you keep a diary, okay, you keep a diary and you note down various things. You write dear diary, dear reader, whatever it is you write in the diary. Okay, I've looked at a lot of diaries. I've looked at a lot of diaries which are not by famous people, but it's called a day at a time. It's about ordinary women writing their diaries daily. Why are they writing it? Will this be looked at later on? At one stage you say, this diary is mine, I don't want anybody to look at it, I'll hide it. Today you may hide it. But can you really, the minute you say something, or minute you record a song, నాకు పాట పాడడం ఇష్టం, నేను బాత్రూమ్ లో పాడుకుంటాను. So okay, that thing I think for myself, is there something like that? Does it reach out to some other person? The minute it reaches out, it is being transmitted or translated into kind of thing. So this is something that we need to ask. So I don't think that there is any act of creativity which is so self-absorbent that it doesn't reach anybody. Everybody who writes it ultimately reaches somebody else. Okay? So we are talking about an act which to me, so let us not use words like this is realistic fiction, this is imaginative fiction, this is art for art's sake, whatever, post art, post something, postmodern, post structural, post. Okay, we all of us which are post are ultimately read, post are ultimately analyzed. Okay, I know that there is a person in my own department now, a young person who was my student, a batch before Hyperparani batch, who is now a big person who's a chair and who writes all kinds of these kinds of things. But I'm sure when he's writing that, when he's engaging himself with that, that means you are engaging with it. The minute you use the word I'm engaging with it, I'm engaging with my audience, right? I believe that there is a dialogue. Right now I feel that while you are keeping quiet, there is still an engagement. Silence also speaks. There is still an engagement. And I am trying to look at the faces of all the people. I try to make eye contact with those whom I think are responding to me. You know? So this is an engagement that you want. So this is one act that I would like to talk to you. And I'd like all my students to think, because don't think of literature as esoteric, okay? Something which is so beautiful. I remember, I must say about a teacher of mine who used to be very fond of me till I decided to do MA literature. I was a BSc student. I was not a literature student. I was a BSc mathematics student. And she used to be very fond of me because I was good at English. And I used to like reading, I used to write. Then when I finally said, I'm going to do MA in English literature, she was very angry with me. She said, how can a person who comes from your background do English literature? You have to be a literature person. You have many more hurdles, perhaps. I don't know who taught the course, perhaps, but I can read a Chaucer and all that. I mean, even without Chaucer Google, I could still read Chaucer and go. There was something called a library and there were books there. So then she told me, you must be extremely sensitive to understand literature. I thought, my God, is she saying I'm not sensitive enough to understand literature? Only sensitive people go to do literature, she told me. So there are certain kinds of things, and we continue to meet. I think because we were in the same university for a number of years, we continued to meet. We were good friends and all that. But this thing that she told me is always there somewhere in my mind. It has got translated into my mind to try and prove that literature is not just that. When I read my Communist Manifesto, I see literature in it. I don't just see the philosophy in it. When I read Ambedkar's text, I see literature in it. the annihilation of caste by Ambedkar is not just about a theory about removal of caste, which is extremely essential in today's world, but the way in which he writes is also so-called literature. So where are you making the distinction about this is literature or this is not? So I was looking at life, literature and translation in this sense, but I also want to say that because you're all bilingual here, okay, at least you know two languages, Telugu and English. Some of you may know more languages. I think there is an onus on us, there is a responsibility on us to take our literature. For too long, we have brought English literature to Telugu. Too long, other literature, Bengali literature to Telugu. Okay. I never knew till my 20th year or more that Sharat was not a Telugu person. Okay. I always thought he's Telugu. Only later on I realized he's a Bengali. Okay. So I mean that's the way we were brought up. So yes, let them come into Telugu, but we have a necessity to take Telugu. If you, and more so to other Indian languages. Unfortunately, I don't know any other Indian language well enough to translate it. I only know one Indian language and that's English. Okay. But I would urge that all of you, and the reason I'm saying this is that we need to, life and literature, we need to have an interaction. And as far as English, writing in English is concerned, we have to translate text from our Indian languages because the kind of depth that is there in our Indian languages is not still there in writings which are written only in English. I'm not saying it is zero. I mean, it's the certain kinds of experiences that are there in Telugu, for example, is not there in any other in English. So I urge you, I will stop at this point because I think it's a little over half an hour that I've spoken. And not yet. Okay. I follow Haripadma Ravi because no, she didn't say half an hour. I said that I want an interaction. But I do think that there is a necessity to translate this. And I will end this with, I mean, there are so many writers I see that we have translated from Telugu to English. So many powerful writers who have gone in that I'm not going to name them because what happens in naming is that you always are told you have left out somebody. Okay. Let us not talk about it. But one thing that Sridhar and I have done consciously is to translate stories which have a social impact, either of caste, of class, or of gender. And therefore, I will end this whole thing because I want to connect it back to life, literature, and translation to one story. And that is because you had an endowment lecture of that person last week with a story by that person, which is a disturbing story. And I want to say, at the end of it, she says something. So today we are concerned, we are all listening to the Me Too. You've heard the Me Too thing, and especially Padmavati University girls should not say we don't know, okay? The Me Too thing, the protest against it, the thing that we too are with you all, even if we have not undergone those kinds of things. Some of them are saying we have undergone, but we too have undergone. So this story is about a young girl who is taken away, a girl who is not yet mature, being kidnapped and taken into prostitution. And she doesn't even know the meaning of sex. And there is a myth that men, if they have problems, have sex with a girl who is not mature, all the problems will get solved. Physical problems will get solved. And so she talks about it. And this is where all the connections come. We use the word, we hear this song. In my time, it was very popular. Ayonija Paine Anumanama. Okay? And it talks about, then who is Ayonija? A lot of people may think. And then we are told Ayonija is Sita. But we never ask what is the relationship between Ayonija and Sita. What does that word mean? So what I'm asking all of you all is to think about words. What are the origin of words? What do those things, words mean? Ionija means one who is not born of a yoni, of his female organ. A woman is not born of the female organ. But this girl says not born of the female organ. She says, what is the problem for all women? It's the female organ. I wish I were born without an organ. No. But now women are saying, no, why should we even say that? We have to move beyond it. But what I'm trying to say is you have to understand the meanings of words. What is the meaning? What is the word and all that? See, when I look at our President Draupadi, I'm so happy that she has the name Draupadi. Just think of your own life. How many Draupadis have you met in your life? How many Draupadi? Has anyone met any other Draupadi? No. No. Very rare. Yeah, no, very rare. No, I haven't met any. Right? The only Draupadi you have met some Draupadi.
And it is not so, but in the news it was there that there is a village where women folk are there, the number of women.
Yeah, what I'm saying is we don't, now that she is named Draupadi, it is coming out, right? So there are discussions about that. And the only other Draupadi I know is the character in Mahashweta Devi's Draupadi. Now again, she's an Adivasi. Okay. Now, why do we not name our children Draupadi? Any guess?
She has 5 husbands, that's not acceptable.
She has 5 husbands, it's not acceptable, right? That's the only thing we think of. But do we ever think of the power of Draupadi? A woman who could stand in the court of all men and say a man who has lost himself, she's a good lawyer. You talk about my lawyer meaning. She's a good lawyer. She says when a man has already lost himself, then how can he use me? Okay, that is one. And then he also asks how I'm not a rich property to be lost, right? So here's a woman who is so powerful in argument, then why are people not naming us that thing? Okay. And it is said in Mahabharata that she was a pativrata also, because she was told that you can live with one man 1 year, so that you have a parentage of a child. This is all accepted, but all these are put aside for us. Then we are only given that 5. Androgyny is wrong. Sorry, I'm not androgyny. Polyandry is wrong. Sorry, polyandry is wrong. Polygamy, ठीक है. पति पत्नी और वो. Okay. So this thing that men's sexuality is okay, women's sexuality is wrong. So somewhere there, so I really admire. I mean, I'm so happy that our president is Draupadi. I mean, at least now we will start rethinking. Even those who are into a conservative mold, those who believe in certain kinds of, even those people I'm saying, I'm not talking about people moving away from that conservative way of thinking, will now start rethinking any of these kinds of things. So we need to translate our mind. We need to translate our ideas, and we have to bring these ideas into the fore. And a person like our president is giving us the opportunity to rethink, reevaluate, relook. I mean, a whole lot of debate now, right? How can anybody talk about her looks or whatever it is, right? What she looks like, whether she's dark, and I mean, what gives us the feeling that if you're fair, you're beautiful, if you're dark, you're not beautiful? I mean, these are all evaluations that we need to ask ourselves, and that is what literature has to teach us. That is what literature should be teaching us. And I'm sure your teachers, even if you have a very structured syllabus, will be able to connect you to all of these things. And stop there. And I stop here with the plea. I have a plea. And that is, please don't judge anybody without applying your mind to it. don't think that Uma wears a sari and therefore she's an ultra-conservative person, okay? Or Uma wears a sari and therefore she does not know how to use a phone, a smartphone, or she doesn't know the meaning of men, okay? Or, you know, or any of these things. So I think we need to ask meanings, we need to ask questions about all of these things. I end by once again, I'm not ending because I want questions. You can completely annihilate me. Okay? If we are unable to annihilate caste in this country, but I want that caste to be annihilated, that fear to be annihilated like that. You annihilate me, and I'm quite happy to be annihilated. And I look forward to your questions. No, you know me, I'm happy to. I do hope I made some sense, and if I've disturbed you, I'm very happy. Yes, please.
Good morning, ma'am.
Yeah, please introduce yourself because everyone has a name. I want to begin with that. Okay. Right.
I'm Manjusha, a research scholar from the Department of English of Padmavati University. I have a question. I don't know if this is related to our lecture or anything, but whenever I try to write something, an essay, an article, or a story or anything, I begin and I lead that very well. But when I come to the conclusion, I have not one or two, but many reserves. So all the stories, I leave it midway. So how to conclude a story or how to conclude a translation? I've tried to translate one or two songs from Telugu, but I was not able to.
There are two things that I would like to say. Thank you very much. I'm so happy that you write and you continue to write in spite of the fact that you say you don't have conclusion. Life has no conclusion. There are no conclusions, no easy answers to anybody. You know, the pumpkin will not turn, the coach will may turn into a pumpkin and Cinderella might find the ideal prince, but that is all it's all a myth, okay? I'm just joking. But no, why are you worried about conclusions? An inconclusivity is itself a conclusion, you know? When you do not conclude, you're also concluding in a certain sense. So that's the conclusion. You don't have to worry about it. Secondly, when you're translating, and this is something that I will say for both Sridhar and myself, we don't worry about how to end the translation. The author has ended the translation in a way, and we will end the translation in the way the author has ended. I may like it, I might not like the ending. I wish it were more powerful, or I wish it were more subtle, but I will end it the way it is. That's the way we translate. For example, we translated a story called Masigudda, by Kupili Padma. And it's an interesting story. A woman is like a Masigudda, right? We don't know the value of that. I don't know, many of you today may not use that, or you may still use that in your houses. Many of you may be using, more clean things. But in my house, even today, I use one of those to pick up a hot thing or from the stove and all that. But the minute, if I don't use it, my hand will get burnt, right? But if I use it, I don't think of it. It's such a beauty thing, I just leave it, right? But what has happened is that the idea is good, the ending is good and all that, but there is a big lecture that the narrator gives at the end of the thing, which Sridhar and I thought could have been a little more subtle, okay? But that's her. That is the way Padma wants to write. Who are we to say he should not write like that? So we write that. If I were writing a paper, I may say something about it, but so conclusions in a translation, I don't think we should worry about. But conclusions for your own sake, don't worry. Your inconclusivity is a thing. There's a Kurosawa is a very famous director. He has a movie called Rashomon, and the whole thing is that there are so many perspectives to that one story. So if you're not able to give a conclusion, it's fine. Or if you say, oh, this ends, and I think maybe I can also end it like that. There are people who write like that. You know, they give two possible endings. I don't think there's a problem. Good, you are writing in spite of this fear in you. Please continue to write.
Thank you. I would like to add something on personal note, ma'am.
Honest?
I would like to add something on a personal note that you and Sridhar sir have translated two of my father's poems from Telugu to English.
No, and your father is?
He is Mr. Pemaraj Gopal Krishna, and he wrote a book, an anthology of poems called Karachalanam.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for giving us this information. Yes, that is from, I think in the 1990 volume of Sahitya Academy, which brought out poetry, the poetry volume we had, and we were fortunate enough to translate. We translate things we like, so we must have liked what we translate.
Thank you, ma'am.
Nice meeting you after years of knowing you with Mahila University in '84. And I've seen you after that. We heard quite a bit about you. I'm really glad that I'm here this morning, and I had the time without a busy schedule, which we completed yesterday. So I've asked some of my coursework students also to be here because we are now working on something called as transdisciplinary research. And I've invited a couple of colleagues from the Department of English who are not very sure as to how they could be a part of transdisciplinary research. So when I asked my students to attend this morning, I told them that there is a lot of literature talking about social issues related to women, related to poverty, related to untouchability, etc. So I told them that you have to build up this thinking as to how you can use literature and try to understand it in a language that you can communicate to the community. Yeah. So if you can share with them a couple of examples of your work in terms of how they can use literature in their work in the community. And they're working with patients affected with HIV/AIDS. They're working with cancer patients. Right now, the present batch of students. And some of them will be working with a tribal community right in the middle of Tirupati, and very close by to Veena, Adivasi community, which is Alladi. And in a terrible situation, like marriages at the age of 13, 14, 15, having 3 children by the age of 18, very bad in reproductive health, not being educated, particularly the girls, and I'm surprised the boys are also not attending. So this is the situation where they're working. Now, if they want to, go and communicate with this community and work with them.
Thank you much. It was so nice to see you walking. It took me a minute because you were so skinned at that time. Yeah, age is 37 years. 37 years since we have met. So it took me 1 minute. In fact, I was telling Hari Padma last night, we were 3 Umas and unfortunately one is not there. And talking about all the people in that room, Violet and Radilakshmi and others who were with us at that time. So, as I said, we do translate texts which are socially relevant. As far as we find whether it's a Dalit text, one of our recent books, I'm also happy to share is that for gender sensitivity, this text of Subhadra Subhadra has been awarded the Alladi Media International Prize for this text. This happened just 3 days ago, which is given to the author. Subhadra received it. It's called the Telugu text was called Rayakamanyam, whereas the English text has been, they didn't want that title because they didn't think it could be out. One of the stories is called How Are You Veg? And I think, for example, that kind of a story is very important for your students. At a time when certain kinds of food being eaten by people like beef or whatever is being questioned, and it's a tough task for us, for Sridhar and me. We are vegetarians, and she is questioning the very basis of our vegetarianism. Okay, but what we feel is that each person has her own take, her own ways of looking at the world, her own ways of confronting the world. So whether it is food, whether it is clothing, whether it is, in that there is one story about the person who is disabled, you combine disability with caste and poverty. So what happens to such a girl within the same community itself? How do people treat her? She's a woman, she's disabled, she's poor. Okay, she's not very educated. So how do you deal with it? So these are questions that come to it. So I think reading about them through literature, through the eyes of some others, I'm sure you're going there and working with them is one level. But if you read a story like, you're going with the Adivasis, if you read a story by Mahasweta Devi, what is that called? Ippa, right? See that man, Adivasi man writes the story. Yeah, it's a story called Ippa, and it's and tell me the name of the person. I should slip my mind right now. So he talks about how so practical training is given to all these people. Ultimately, how they are using them, and they are only inviting the girls for a job because they are using the girls, hospitality business. Now, she is questioning this very notion of what this hospitality business is. Hospitality is not being just a woman who is a person in the waitress in a restaurant. Mallipuram Jagdish is the name of the person. So they bring various views because some of you may be from the community, some of you may not be from the community, some of you may not be from a remote area, but in Tirupati. So many things may happen. So the thing is, it exposes you to various kinds of value systems. So I think literature also has its say, not literature written by people who belong to that community have a different take. There are people also who write about a different community. So ultimately, I think it will, as you're saying, if you're reading the literature, and literature, I don't even only mean stories or novels. So, for example, if one reads P. Sainath, if you read P. Sainath's think about drought, and or his latest book on foot soldiers who made this country, it's not just yes, all these bigger people like Patel or all of them have made India, but there are people who are foot soldiers in the sense ordinary people who have created history. Okay. For example, Anveshi brought out a volume called We Were Making History. Okay. That was in Telugu and then translated into English. So these are things that, so start thinking not for them and also for you of literature, not just as, the genre. I don't know how it is now, because at one stage when we started, they decided we'll have poetry genre, prose genre, this genre, that genre. So there are, yes, genres help us understand, but there are different kinds of writings which help us understand. So if I say, read an autobiography, is autobiography, somebody will say, is autobiography literature? I say, yes. It's a personal life. Who wants to know whether he shaved or he didn't shave, you know? But it may lead us to certain questions, you know. It's like, you know, there's a very famous paradox. I don't know whether all of you have heard this paradox. It's called, a man goes to a barber and asks him, who do you shave? The barber says, I shave all those who do not shave themselves. Okay? So the question is, does the barber shave himself or not? If he shaves himself, he cannot shave himself, right? If he doesn't shave himself, he has to shave himself, right? So it's a paradox. There are no answers to these questions. It's like that. So there are many times no direct answers to the thing. So I'm very happy that you want them to be exposed to more of these things. And they should be. There may be and there may be certain things which are written with that locale also. You may be able to find them, which are very specific to papers, very specific to that area, and that may also help in a certain way. I heard so-called literature students who say nobody will read this, to read those texts, and for those texts, Alladi Kathalu we won't read, to read those stories also. So,
I personally believe that translation is a very subjective experience. But the fact that two of you are doing it together, I'm curious what your role is and what Sridhar's role is when you are actually doing the translation. What do you do and what does he do? I mean, I can imagine one person doing it, but two of you, how do you go about it? Does he do it first and do you edit it, or what are your individual roles there, or do you do it as
okay, and on a lighter scale, I will tell you, those who have regard for Sridhar say that he translates and gives my name, and those who think that Sridhar doesn't know English, say that Uma translates and puts his name down. I mean, it's a genuine question. How does one collaborate, whether it's in criticism or in translation? Criticism is also interpretation. Yeah. Do you accept critical papers written by you people? They can discuss, they can do all that, but translate, I'm just personally. No, I'm asking you, can criticism you have accept, it can be done. You have read papers that are done, maybe these days even in languages and literature, two people write a paper together. It's common in sciences and social sciences, but in literature, now people are writing papers together. No, criticism also is that, as I said right in the beginning, criticism also is an act of translation. Interpretation is also a form of translation. So when you first and foremost, you must have an understanding that there's at some level, okay, there is something that both of us share about a view of the world. Unless there is no such base, I'm not saying we are clones. We are not clones, okay? But we have some basic things in common. A respect for others. A feeling that he and I share. That is because we began with Ambedkar in your introduction. I'm saying we believe that this one of the nastiest things that is happening to our country is the caste system. And there should be a basic elimination of this caste system. So if we share a place like that, or as a woman, everybody thinks, oh, woman is a privileged woman because she comes from a privileged class. No. My thing may be different from yours, may be different from Bharati's, but there is something that I may have undergone which none of you have seen already. So when I talk about this, there must be an empathy from that person to say, yes, there's a woman. So he has a disadvantage. Upper caste, Western educated, right? He has all the disadvantages. I have only, at least one less disadvantage, but upper caste woman. Okay. Then the the question is that there must be something where we can understand. My child will say they're always quarreling, they're always at loggerheads, they don't agree on something. Then he said, I'm going away to my room because you're discussing, Just a minute, please. Don't come. No, I won't come. So, if you come to say that again, I can't. No. Take care, I understand you are having fever. Take care. Yeah, don't write something. It's long, I just said that I'm sorry for the interruption, but I felt she made a very, very genuine move to come and see those who are not there today. So we, but as I was saying, he said, no, I go away, but no. Much of it have been argued and much of it has to come. So first and foremost, as our process is that whether we like a text enough to translate or not. Whether we agree with the kind of questions that the writer is doing. We have done a volume of his son is here, volume which is recently developed. So in that there were a number of stories. So there were some we liked enough to translate, not that we didn't like the stories, but we liked enough to translate. So how do we come? So that is one level. So we must have, if we don't have, if I'm working with an extreme male chauvinist, I don't think I will work with that person. I will translate that person. If I work with a rabid caster, I won't work with that person. So at that level, there must be some understanding that we have between. So it is there. So we work from that. So we read the stories independently together. Earlier on, when we were working at the university, we had much more time together. We have done things, we had a 1.5 hour drive in the car, so we do a lot of things in the car also together. So we have done various things. We have done things where we have sat and read this thing and then translated together, each one, debating on the word. If I'm missing out on anything, you're free to, I'll give you permission as So, the question is that we would do that. If I need to. Yeah. And if it was then, otherwise, there are times when he translates something and then shows it to me and then we work on it. I mean, there are times when in the same story he has translated 2 pages. I don't look at it, I go ahead and translate the rest. So then we try to see that whether there is uniformity, there is no uniformity and all that. But it takes a lot of emotional source because we have a lot of arguments about the thing, but we enjoyed doing it, and that's why I guess our first translation was published on May 16, 1993. So we published, I remember the date, like I joined Patna University on November 5th, 1984. That's I remember. Some dates remain with me. That's how it is. So we generally don't translate unless we want. There are a lot of people are unhappy with us. On a lighter but I must tell you one thing, he never allowed me to translate. He writes poetry. But he never allowed for a joint translation. He wants to translate his own words. Poetry is different now. I mean, this is an added question. Last night, Vishal was asking me, who was their student, between the two of them, who was a better teacher? That was the question he asked me. So I would like to actually take it through from him and ask you, between the two of you, who do you consider is a better translator? I say the same thing. very difficult to answer that. It's very difficult to answer that because if you say yes, he has done fine himself, therefore he should be a better translator. But I don't know. I think each of us puts in certain things and that's it. Oh, I want to tell you one thing that you can look, ask your students to look at. There is a we were looking at it last night because we translated some of those into Telugu. It's called WASH. WASH. We must have looked into it. We did that because they wanted it in Andhra Pradesh. So we did the first volume, 3 COVID volumes. All of them into Telugu. We did from Katha. Yes. For school children, but some of them are very useful for yeah, but I think they should be read in classrooms also because at this level we talk about comics and other things. So in that sense it should be that about women growing up, hygiene and all that. So it's a good thing. Oh, sorry, I just remembered I thought I'd share it with you. But I think I should first someone asking and do that further. Isn't there a requirement for either of you we have to be more open to other views and then yeah. There's no possibility of working together for so many years. Here in the years now looking for right.
I was just saying, if you have to work together for a period of 30 years, there must be some moments where you have to be open, willing to listen to others, and then try to change your views because based on what others are saying or whomever you're working with.
Okay.
So does that happen? Not because I think where Padma is coming from is unless you are open, you can't work together. You stick to your views and you say this is what is right.
No, I think we are open in that sense. There are
I'm not asking for purpose, I'm talking about the general requirement.
No, I think it is necessary. I mean, with this experience, I'm talking about it, about the larger sense. And in a way that, yes, people have to be open, unless you are open and are willing to admit, very often, in the immediate thing, we don't admit that you are wrong, the other person is right. In any situation where people work for a long time. But I think once we start analyzing ourselves and saying that especially we are working and we are thinking that this work is going to be useful in some sense to us and to others in a way, we have to accept that there are that I think there's nobody who is flawless, and journey of 30 years, a journey of 50 years, a journey of 1 year, or journey of 2 years is a journey of change, is a journey of knowing oneself. I think when I came into Padmavati in 1984 and in 2022, coming back to Padmavati University, and if I think what could I have done if I were what I am today then, okay, for that 1 year that I was here. Would I have done what I had done? Some yes, some no. Okay. Some yes, I wanted to build a department. I had a dynamic vice chancellor. We were only 3. And they would just, I'm not that I had anything more. I had a PhD with them. That's all. That was the difference. So, yes, so we do learn, I think, and 2 people working together for a long period of time, you get understanding and an understanding to tolerate the other's flaws. Yeah, to understand it. So,
I just add, as Uma was saying, translation is an act of interpretation. And the disagreements between us have come precisely on that. On the way we interpret a particular sentence in a story. We have disagreed. There are times when we have violent disagreement, violent, not physical, violent disagreement, And we just stopped translating that, kept it aside for a few days. After we have both pulled, we have gone back to it. And we have, obviously, I must have at least sometimes given it, she must have given it. So, yeah, see, that, so definitely, since it's an act of interpretation, there are times when we have disagreed on the way we translated the title. I mean, because that's one of the biggest challenges of translating the title. I mean, a lot of people think that you can just change the, I mean, many fellow translators feel that you can just have a different title. I mean, we are not disagreeing with them either, because for them, the essence of the story must come in the title, and the title that the writer has given may not really have brought out that. So there are people who have changed the story. Just as Uma was saying, there are people who have changed the ending. Research scholars who asked a question asked about conclusion. There are people who have translated where they have changed the ending, because we remember one translator changed the conclusion of Vasari Sita Devi's story that he was. We said, no, you can't. You can't do that. I mean, you can, yeah, you can have a note saying that I disagree with this conclusion. I would have had a different conclusion. You could perhaps say that, but you have no right to. We are pretty much very conservative in terms of sticking to the original in terms of the theme, except when a writer makes a mistake in terms of the historical fact. For example, there was one story where the writer was talking about Ramapagudi, and he said that Ramapagudi and said something about Rama. No, Ramapagudi had nothing to do with Rama, and Ramappa is the sculptor's name. So then he has clearly gone wrong. Even then, even in that case, he retained what he has said, but even a note saying that this is historically. So that's what I would like to add. So in terms of the way we have interpreted lines of stories and so on, there have been several disagreements, and we have come to some.
And unless we did that, we would have continued translating. That's it.
Yeah, that is the phase that is your point. So when a book is published, it becomes published.
Yes.
Then, as you said, that we will have different perceptions. Maybe you also will be having perceptions. Is there any possibility of your perceptions coming in the way of your translation? That is my question. So sometimes it so happens that, especially in poetry, so there will be nativity and something that is cultural things and all, culture related and all. So in such cases, you will, maybe, is there any possibility of your perception differing from the writer's perception?
Yeah, I think as Shita has just explained, and the thing is that every act of reading is an interpretation. I read a text, I read it slightly differently from the way in which Haripadma may read it or you may read it. So, supposing I read the line, there's a poem by a Telugu woman writer called Parda Hatake Dekho. Okay, Shah Jahan writes this poem to expose certain things that goes around. So remove the veil and see. Okay. Now, when I think about this, I may have a lot of things about what she may want to say. But beyond that, I go into the poem and then wonder what is it that she is saying. Is she completely against the way or is she not against the way? Or what is happening? So I am reading that poem at that level, you know. Somebody may read and say, oh, how can she say that? Because a woman who wears the hijab has a right to wear the hijab because she wants to wear the hijab. Okay. So somebody who's reading that when she wants to see that may see it slightly differently from me and may think that this poem has to be read in this kind of manner. So we are doing a balancing act, right? Especially translating into another language. If I'm writing a paper on it, because now saying we talk about it in terms of some other text and things like that, and we do that. But here, when I'm doing it, I'm translating what I consider her idea. I don't know. See, one thing that has happened for us is that most of the writers we have translated are living writers. Very few writers were no more. And we have, for example, when we did a story on leather making and all that, Inagaru was so kind enough to come home to explain those things to us because that is so very alien to us. We have never experienced that act of leather making at all. When I think of a handbag, I think of a shop, right? Where I can go and pick up a thing. But here is a man who's talking about leather making as an art. Okay? And another thing is, we are fighting it, you are talking about it. So I and Sridhar are fighting at it at different levels. It is about killing an animal, right? It's about so it's about all this for which for us who are vegetarians, it's a very difficult task to understand at very many levels. But we are fighting that to understand the other person's perspective. So it is not that those fights don't go on in our brain. So that is why we had one story about the man who brings up his bull, and what is that called? That story, story. That this man is a Dalit man. Hence his bull, and he tells the master, don't race him. He cannot withstand the race at this point because he is not well enough to race. Don't do it. But the man wants to win the race, so he gives drinks to the bull, and then it dies in the tail. And then ultimately, who are the people to take away the bull from this rich landlord? The ready landlord, who is to take it away? It is the Madhika man only who has to take it away. But he is a man who may eat that, but for him at that particular point, it is the most loved and cherished thing. So that conflict that he is able to show, right? That is when we realize that, those kinds of stories make us realize many things. That at one level we may eat the beef, but at another level we love the bull that they send to. So the question comes to that conflict at first thing. So when I do that, a lot of people say, "Oh, you're not a mother. How you'll never born a child? So how can you write or talk about motherhood or parents or motherhood?" I mean, it's impossible to live every single thing. I did not birth a child, but I have a child I brought up. So there are things that are involved in the thing. One is not, and we make a great, in our own stories, I did taught upon that everybody only talks about Yashoda as the mother of Krishna. Never Devaki, I mean, very rarely, correct me if I'm wrong. We blame women about love, but we are all the time hearing in our thing, Radha ka bhi sham hai. And no love like Radha Sham's love. But if an older woman is in love with a younger person, we absolutely condemn such a relationship. So we are caught up in all of these kinds of a thing, and these are stories that make me want to come out of it. So when I read a Kamala Das's poem where she's talking about an older woman and a man's love, I feel that, okay, I'm not saying, therefore, young girls, keep it in your mind, be 30, find a man of 20 and love. I'm not saying that, okay? I'm not advocating that kind of a thing. But what I'm saying is don't condemn somebody. Okay? Don't condemn somebody because it is each individual person's desire to be what they want to be. Okay? And it took me, I'm not, I'm what, how old am I, Nisha? I'm 70. I always say I'm 17. Okay. In all my things. But it's much more difficult. I will not expose many of these things. I'm brought up very conservative because to break barriers. It's very difficult. But you are exposed to so-called modernity. So you have to break the barriers, and that is that social, you have such a wonderful experience in Padmavati University. That social work was what was in this university. I remember afterwards you have now sociology also you have, right? You still don't have that. The idea is that there must be something where you're doing actively to society, something that you're doing. So you have to come together in a certain way. I want to end with one question. I won't stop here, but I will stop here and I think it is time. But I want one question from the audience. One from the girl. Nothing from the boy? Because I told you my age, you want to I mean,
Good afternoon, ma'am. My name is Bhargavi, research scholar from the Department of English in Padmavati University. We want a suggestion. What are the things we have to keep in mind while translating something? And also, is the criteria same for translating a poem, a story or a short story? Is the criteria same for all the things or it is different?
What do you keep in mind while translating? Love what you do. Okay? Pick up a thing that you love, pick up a thing that you empathize with, and translate it. Okay? That's one of the most important criteria. If you don't like something, you can never put your heart and soul to it. Okay? I'm not saying there will be 100% agreement with the text. No text can be like that. What you write today, you won't have 100% agreement later on also. So you must love it. You must enjoy it. You must say that this is something I want to do it. I want to take, and for me, and I think I can say for Sheila also, not just what we want, but what we want to take across. We want others to know this, that this kind of a thing exists. Okay? That these are issues that exist. So then that's something that you need to do. So what are the criterion? See, I don't think there are separate things like that. See, when we read a poem, I've always used this example of Kamala Das, which comes to my mind. Go to her autobiography and go to some of her poems. There are exact lines in her autobiography that are there in her poem, except that in her poem, she has split them into lines. In her autobiography, they are connected in a paragraph. So these kind of differences that we make are just for our convenience in a certain sense. So, of course, it's very difficult to translate, very traditional poetry which has been and all that. That's a very difficult. I think many people now are attempting mostly more contemporary things which are free verse in a certain sense. So I don't think there are different criterion as such, but the word, whether you choose for, whether I use the word doubt or suspicion, for a word in Telugu will have to depend on the context in which I don't doubt your ability. I can't say I don't have suspicion. I have suspicion over your ability is a distinct thing altogether, right? But doubt and suspicion, if you go to your dictionary, means the same. Okay. So you pick up a word that should suit that in a circumstance. So like we were discussing that whether somebody is old or whether somebody is elderly. It's a kind of how do you use this word? What context? Thank you.
I have a very basic question. Yeah. We have so many theories on translation, and I often get a doubt. Do we really need a theory to translate? And isn't it enough to have command over two languages and a sense of, translation in a meaningful manner? What do you think about the theory and the role of the theory in translation, ma'am?
I'm very ignorant of theory. So I have translated. I do read articles. That way, I consider that. Whether I've always said this. To say I'm ignorant is just an exaggeration. But what I'm saying is, I don't think that I remember when Shanta first came to me as a student to do her PhD in drama, and she wondered what theoretical framework. This is a question you asked. What theoretical framework should I take to put my text into that thing on African American women's analysis? I said, no framework. The framework should emerge. The framework, you be aware of all the theories that are there, but the framework should emerge from it. So, whether it is interpretation of literature or things like that, it is the same. I've read some theoretical things, but my entire thing in translation has been my reading of translation and my being involved in the process of translation. We do attend some, not now, but not in the recent past, pre-COVID and all that for the last, some personal reasons too, where I have not gone to seminars. We used to go to seminars, we listen to very high-falutin translation theory and wonder whether we are doing anything, but we are happy we are translating. But we met a young man who said that he is into translation theory, he studies a translator, and he is going to look at theories of the questions that have been asked. Two people, how do they translate? Or if the same text is now Gabilam has been translated twice. Once by Saki Madhav and the recent one. And so what happens when two different people translate at two different periods of time? So that kind of a thing may be interesting, but I don't know. I know I feel that. You probably don't learn if you're in the academia, thanks to the amount of academia. And today, if I have not made sense, I'm also happy because I'm outside the academia. Nobody will say I won't give you a promotion because you didn't make sense. So, it's something that I like, I think.
Ma'am, it was a pleasure hearing you speaking so much about translation. There are only two translators in Telugu whom I know. I read more of Tamil and Tamil literature. One is you and the other one is my recent finalist, Professor Srinivas from Andhra University. My first introduction to Telugu translation and Telugu literature as such was your book, Ioni and Other Stories. I read it when I had just registered under you as a PhD scholar. I found it in my library and I read it.
Don't tell them, they may think I don't.
No. You didn't tell that, ma'am. Okay, you didn't even tell that to me. And you don't flaunt anything, ma'am. We discover you. And it's a pleasure discovering you. And the more we discover you, we stand in awe. Let me tell you that. And it really shook me out of my complacency, given the middle class life that we have and the securities that we have and insecurities which certain vulnerable sections of women go through. And then subsequently, ma'am, I wonder how you choose your team. Is it based on the societal relevance or social revolutions that you think of, or is it any ideology to which you think of? Is it Marxism? Is it stories which have a Marxist relevance, or women's liberation, or the Dalit and the subaltern studies, or only about the subaltern, the choice of things? How do you arrive at it?
Yeah, I want to keep away from the theories. Yes, I've read Marx. Yes, I've read feminism, feminist theories, both the mainstream, African American, Dalit feminism. I've read Dalit theories, you know. I've done all of these things, but that's why I said it's not that I'm ignorant of theories, okay? I'm an ignoramus to a certain degree, but I'm not so ignorant of theories. But I don't think that after all, our worldviews are also shaped by what we read, people we meet, what has gone on in our own life. There's so many things that happen. And when I look at the inequalities in the society I live in, I live in a comfortable home, but I see inequalities all around me. It sort of shakes me out of my complacency. There is guilt, there is anger, there is frustration. And so it's not, I mean, not that I'm an unhappy human being. I'm happy at times, you know, I enjoy being with people and all that. But this anger, this frustration, this thing, what is it that I can do? You know, this was one of the main reasons I left the university. Because in the university, I found that, you know, my interaction with, yes, you all, I'm not saying that people don't change in the university, and I'm happy some of my students, who are my colleagues or my betters now, have changed, have brought in some change and all that thing. But I felt that some of these have to be sown at a very early age. That is why I moved out of the university. Of course, I must say, he moved out at a very young age. I moved out at a reasonable age, and there is a difference between him and me. I had comfort. Even if I got my pension, but I had my comfort. So people say, "Nikenti, okay, ni kavasindi no chestunnavu, okay." Yeah, I did. Okay, fine. I never said that I don't have. I had the comfort of what I did. I never felt that if I retired, you know, people are not saying therefore every Bharti should retire, National should retire. They have their own reasons for why they are there, their own economic necessity, their own personal reasons. So many things will be there. So I did it like that. So whereas in his case, he doesn't come from an affluent background, and yet he did it at a very early age. So that's something that why he did it, he has his own reasons. I'm not going into it. So there is a thing where therefore, your answer, I want this. So one thing I've been exposed to are books. And these books don't reach a wider audience. These books don't reach hippies. See, you may say ultimately books in English are read only by certain strata of society. Yes, I want that strata of society to be shaken. Why should they live in comfort? You know, why should they think that one day I go to a temple, I feed 1,000 people in the temple, and my job is done. Okay. my guilt is gone, my job is done. It's not feeding 1,000 people, so it's a kind of thing. So I think that one of the ways is for me to take these books. And sometimes in this, Sridhar and I have a argument also. Do you think that books will shake people? I think they've shaken me. Maybe they'll shake. Maybe it's not a big impact. Maybe it's not a huge impact, but sometimes somebody will be shaken, I mean, I do know that there is a person that I most admire. He is now in his mid-80s. He studied in the US in one of the best universities. He came away and he decided he won't get married. He decided what is the most backward area in this country. He went to Chipurupalli, lived there, he had started a trust called the Sodada Trust. And he has dedicated his entire life. Initially, he was a mediator between the tribal and the city people because he felt that they were being exploited. And then slowly he decided education is the most important thing. So he started something called the Manabadi program in Andhra. And it's become a very popular thing. I visited that one. He takes local things and teaches children to study and all that. So I'm not him, he's a complete activist. I'm not being able to do that. So in my little measure, I mean, I still feel guilty about it, but in my little measure, can I do something kind of a thing? Writing as activism. Translate. No, this is armchair activism. Well, I also fully agree with what Professor Nobel has said, in terms of theories of translation, the Western theories of translation. When I did teach those theories for some time in my class, I was so uncomfortable teaching it because it's all French examples. And these theories do so much of a violence on Indian literature that we teach to them as a text in the class. I was always thinking about including only Indian theories of translation. Even that is very difficult because of the plethora of languages that we have. So, no, it is important. No, I'll tell you, I used to go to a little children's school, in the ghettos. Small children would come and in a small school run by a family, and small children from the very poor background, and they loved nursery rhymes. So one day I was teaching them English or Japanese, they said. So I was just teaching them teddy bear, turn around. After some time, they liked it because turn around and fall down and all that thing was there. After some time, teddy bear and anything. So, that's where it shocked me out of my complacency. I thought everybody will know a teddy bear. Because on TV, there's teddy bears there, children will carry teddy bears and all that. But teddy bear is something, then I asked them whether they have seen a bear. Google on a teddy bear. Many of them have not even gone to a zoo to see a bear, or they have not seen a bear on the television. So I took a teddy bear with me and showed it to them and all that thing. But this thing, this is translation, right? This thing of that, my child knows a teddy bear, therefore that child will also know a teddy bear. I mean, it's just, I used to think, you go to a shop, you'll find a teddy bear there. You go to a shop, you find a teddy bear there. That's when I had a slap on my face. Okay? And that slap on my face makes me aware that I should watch my words when I speak. I have to be careful on what I say, to whom I speak, and how I speak. And that has helped me in translation also. Thank you very much, and I really enjoyed myself, and I'm so happy I came. About a month ago, we were passing by this bypass road, going from Bangalore to Sridhar's village, Alluru, near Nellore, and I said, we'll take this road if we go to Tirupati, and I want to go to Tirupati. And soon enough, my wish was, fulfilled. Devata granted me enough. So, and thanks so much. I mean, jokes apart, thank you, Bharati. Thank you, all of you. And I'm so happy to see you again, Mom. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Professor Alladi. We have learned, we have enjoyed. You are really grateful to you for accepting at last before I leave the university.
Apologize to Bharati. She did invite me. I did exactly 10 years ago. I fought to come. In fact, in the middle of the night, I had to cancel the attempt, and my colleague and I were to come, and my colleague Sunita faced a lot of trouble because in those days, no Dr. Googles and other things. So we had to call the airlines and tell them, and university had to have only Indian Airlines. Yes. So we called Indian Airlines and we had to tell them, and they canceled both our tickets because my colleague and mine were the same ticket, and she went to the airport and found herself at a loss. So then we had to call and negotiate and she came for that seminar. It was a workshop or
It's a seminar on the retirement of Ashoka Rani's retirement. So I wanted to all these people connect. Thank you very much, Madam. Anyway, finally here because now I request Professor Uma Veena to come and present their memento. She's former rector, in charge vice chancellor and former rector, at present head of the department social work. Thank you, madam. Now I invite Professor Nirmala to propose the report.
Yeah, good afternoon to everyone. If I am not exaggerating, it's like having Professor Alladi here with us today is like dream come true because we have been trying to invite her and this happened today. And I would like to thank, first of all, I would like to thank Ms. Shireen and Hepzibah for their generous contribution to this endowment lecture. And I profusely thank Professor Bharati, whom we call, ever obliging madam in the department for accepting to be the chairperson of this event today. Thank you so much, madam. I profusely thank Professor Alladi for being with us today. Thank you for that enlightening and thought-provoking lecture, madam. I think students have got benefited from that lecture and hope you take up translations on life and literature. My humble thanks are due to Professor Sridhar, Professor Sarada and Professor Sumakiran and our ever-inspiring woman on the campus, former rector, Professor Uma ma'am, to be with us today, and also the colleagues from other departments. I'm very happy to see a bunch of boys here. This happens very rarely on this campus. Thank you for coming from SV University, all the boys and girls, students and scholars. And I thank all my students and scholars in the department to be with us, for being with us today and making this program an ever perishable one in our department. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Dr. Nirmala. But we are on time. We are supposed to leave this hall by 12:30. We could be able to do it. Yes, madam. We wanted to be very disciplined people here. Please stand for national anthem.